Let's jump into our first session of the last day, run by Fergus Dyer Smith, founder of Wooshi. Fergus has a rich entrepreneurial background, having founded Wooshi to help companies scale video operations and production. With Wooshi, Fergus is now redefining marketing with AI-powered solutions, offering AI agents, inputs, and tools to 10x productivity for teams and agencies. In this session, Fergus will dive into his topic, the one-person billion-dollar company, lessons from the AI-driven shift. Let's unpack this fascinating idea with Fergus Dyer Smith.
Well, hello, I am Fergus Dyer Smith, CEO and founder of a company called Wooshi, and today I'm going to talk to you about the one-person billion-dollar company. Who doesn't want that? Well, AI's here, it's reshaping how businesses operate, but making the leap is not as easy as you might think. Now, tactics are one thing. There's lots and lots of things that you can tactically do to use AI to advance our companies. But when you think more strategically and think about your entire company as a whole, things can get a bit more complicated. So I'm going to give you some of the experiences that we've had. We've built products that are used by a number of large agencies and service companies around the world. I'll tell you how that's gone, how we've integrated that, give a little bit of background as to why we find it so difficult to take on these technological changes, and hopefully some of these things, or maybe one of these things, will be useful to you as you grow out your e-commerce businesses. So kicking off, my name is Fergus, as you can see from the slide, and if you want to get hold of me, I'm typically on LinkedIn. So I'm going to take you through essentially a talk that I was giving and have been given to agency groups, so not specifically e-commerce, but as I've gone through this, I thought, you know, this actually could be interesting to anyone running any company, but there are some ramifications for people working in e-commerce, and I think it's quite an interesting take in terms of what's going on in the world of AI and how it's impacting our businesses. So without further ado, I will jump in. So just as a bit of background, I come from originally and initially a software background, so I built software companies. In fact, the current company started off life as a software business. It moved into being much more of a service-led business over the past few years, and we're now moved back much more to a software business. And in the main, this is because of the rise of AI, and actually it speaks to something that's going on within our industry in particular, which is the rise of what people call service as a software. So obviously trying to attempt to play on words there, but this really is because we're in a business that is very, very service-led, as in there are lots of people and we're selling time. And obviously that does parlay over into e-commerce because there's a whole bunch of service that sits behind e-commerce brands, and of course you've got all sorts of operational complexity that sits behind those businesses as they grow, and a lot of this will be relevant to that. That's our platform. Go and take a look at it. I'm just going to play you this. I think this is a super interesting take. It's about a year old.
We're going to see 10-person billion-dollar companies pretty soon, like billion-dollar valuations. And the thing that in my little group chat with my tech CEO friends, there's this betting pool for the first year that there's a one-person billion-dollar company, which would have been unimaginable without AI, and now will happen.
So of course that's Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, founder of OpenAI, talking about the rise of the billion-dollar business started by one company. And some might argue that we're actually already there. If any of you follow Truth Social, is it Truth Social? No, Truth Terminal, sorry, Truth Social. It's something completely different. If you follow Truth Terminal, you may be aware of the Goatius Maximus coin, which was created from that space, which was driven up to about, I think the last time I looked was at around 800 million USD in market cap. It's probably slightly different now. But the point is, and the point that he's making, is that the opportunity to grow companies without people has arisen and is growing. And there are plenty now examples of people that have managed to build reasonably successful companies using AI without actually having to hire anybody. And some might argue that we're only going to go further that direction. Obviously, Sam Altman is one of them.
We're going to see 10%.
The other big sort of comment that he made about a year ago which really hit into our industry was that AI was going to handle 95% of all the marketing done by agencies and creatives, which, as you can imagine, from an agency standpoint, they were pretty much shocked by that. But he could have a point. The issue, I think, really, again, is this one of looking at wherever you've got service layer or wherever you've got time and you've got actions being taken by humans, especially on computers. That is where AI is going to play a huge role in making those companies way, way more efficient. And indeed, that's what I would be looking at in your own businesses. If you ask people, though, you'll tend to get this answer. So if you ask people, you could replace creative services with almost any services, really. Any knowledge-based business or any knowledge-based role, which of course within any company, including in commerce, you're going to have plenty of people that are involved in sort of knowledge-based roles. Most believe that this is the case, that it's going to be humans with the AI that replace AIs. I'm probably much more in the bottom camp. I think there's a huge argument to be made for the fact that these roles will just disappear altogether, especially those that are based on single tasks or maybe a small number of tasks. These are the roles that are really up for grabs when it comes to AI. But it's worth taking a sort of psychological look at yourself and understanding that, and maybe being a little bit kind on yourself, that actually this is not abnormal. Humans are notoriously bad at projecting technological change and the impacts of technological change. And just as some examples, first up is a piece that was written in the New York Times where the author or the writer was essentially saying, look, it'll be 1 million to 10 million years before we're flying. And then within a few weeks, the Wright brothers took off. This is Ken Olsen, probably one of the most best placed people to take advantage of the rise of the personal computer. Completely missed it. My favorite is this Steve Sasson, inventor of the digital camera, which he invented whilst working at Kodak and was somewhat unceremoniously shut down because, of course, Kodak sells film and they didn't want anything that might come along and impact film sales. Of course, Kodak was then famously essentially put out of business by the rise of the digital camera. So, we as human beings, we either choose to stick our head in the sand or it's just really hard for us to understand technological and advancements, and AI is moving faster than anything, really. Okay, so with all that as background, the talk that I was giving, and I think this, though, it stands for every business, is helping companies try to understand, okay, well, what do we do? Like, how do we take the first steps? Now, there's going to be loads of talks in this session about practically stuff that you can go and do, go and whether it's creating AI-generated ads or further sort of enhancing the algorithms or whatever you're doing on, in meta ads, or perhaps even looking at a lot of forward-facing and outward-facing types of activities, but there's plenty that you can also be doing internally around workflows, around productivity, around optimizing your actual the operations of your business. And where do you start with all that? Because there's just so much to go and look at, and day to day, you've just got to do the day to day. So this is classic agency speak, but set a vision. What do I really mean by that? Well, when I'm talking to leaders, what I try and get them to do is set. When I say set a vision, it really means what's your belief? What do you believe as a business? Is it's us and AI? Is it we're going to go fully AI, or is it in some cases it's like we're not going to use AI at all? So it's setting some sort of sticking some flag in the sand and saying, like, flag in the sand. I think I might have mixed up my analogies there. But sticking a flag in the ground, drawing a line in the sand. There we go. That says, look, this is what we believe, and this is how we're going to go and move forward. The thing that you have to try and then project out is, what does the future like? And it's really, really hard. I love this. This is stolen this off Tim Urban's blog. He writes a lot about this, and he has this nice little way of thinking about it, which is, exponential curves, when you look at them retrospectively, look like linear lines. And when you try and extrapolate that out by looking backwards, you get, an extension and extrapolation of essentially a slow growing linear line. The problem with technological change is more often than not, it's exponential. And so what happens is you look backwards, and as soon as you turn around, you walk face first into a wall of change. And trying to project out where and what the world's going to look like in 6 months, a year, 2 years, really, really hard. And so in some ways, I think this is the license that you need to be able to say, we need to imagine a future. We need to go beyond the extrapolation and try and imagine, well, what if Figure and Optimus work out these humanoid robots and we can get those into our warehouses? What if we can, remove 30-40% of our workforce on the operational side? Like, these are all sort of things worth considering and having a viewpoint on, because it will help you in planning the success of your business. Otherwise, because you can guarantee your competitor down the road is probably doing something like this. Then you need to go and assess your current state. And in an agency or in the marketing world, this is what it looks like to us. So we sat down and looked at the agency business that we own and said, okay, what is it that we're doing? Like, have you ever mapped out the workflow of your entire business? So yeah, you're going to have workflows of, we get an order, it comes in, it gets into the, the shipping line, it gets packaged, it gets sent. Like, you'll have that all nailed. But have you done the whole business? And that's what we did here. Obviously, as I mentioned, with marketing services, you've got a lot of people in the process and you've got a lot of process. So this won't necessarily make any sense. But if you understand marketing, it'll make some sense. We mapped out, okay, what happens from the moment we speak to a customer all the way through to us actually delivering back to them a response or even an output. Who are the people involved? What are the workflows that they have going on? What are they doing behind the scenes? There'll be people there that are working in little spreadsheets that perhaps only they have access to. Maybe they're using Zapier, maybe they're using Make, maybe they've built their own little automations. Like, all these things will exist as a map in your business, and it is worth spending the time. And it may take days, it may take many people to capture all of that and get it up into some sort of map, because that map is your opportunity, really. Therein lies all sorts of optimizations that can be made with the rise of AI and, of course, AI agents. In doing so, you'll also come across things that are not so easy to tackle. So there's this thing called the Moravec's paradox, which I'm sure many of you will know, but if you don't, it was really sort of invented, created, observed by some scientists back in the 1980s. So these were sort of some machine learning computer scientists back in the 1980s. And essentially the observation they made was that, AI, computer science, brilliant at doing some things that we as humans find really, really hard, but absolutely awful at doing some things that we find really easy. So as an example, you can get, as we can see today, we can get an AI to look at a contract, run through it in a few seconds and give you some pointers on, maybe some points that you need to consider, all in the blink of an eye. But if you try and get something to make you a cup of tea, that's a really difficult problem to solve, and some would argue hasn't been solved yet. It was a classic sort of tweet that went out last year, where this woman posted this tweet. I'm going to butcher this, but it was along the lines of, I wanted an AI that could do laundry so I could do art all day, and now I've got an AI that does art and I have to do laundry. So, it's a really good, I guess, observation of where we sit today. And in terms of your own business, in terms of thinking about yourself as a brand and as a business, there'll be elements within the company that just AI isn't quite there yet, and it's not worth sort of yet building for it. That could be something like, I don't know, the way you deal with and handle customer service. Now, obviously, there's a lot of talk out there about companies that have used AI and brought them into the customer service function. And there's no reason why they can't come and assist. But at some point, it could be that actually you're never going to get, or it's going to be some time until you get that emotional intelligence, ability to deal with and handle incoming customer issues. It may be that you can make it way more efficient so you can clear out 80%, but you still got to look for those elements. Okay, where are we definitely and certainly going to still need humans for at least the next few years? Then there's thinking about agents, and I've noticed plenty of talks here, people talking about agents and how agents can help you build out your businesses. If you haven't come across agents, or you don't really know what agents are, well, you're not alone. There's plenty of people that are yet still trying to get their handle on, well, what are these agents, and what are they so magical? Why are they so magical? This was when I became first really aware of them. It was about 1.5 years ago, and these guys on well, I think this was a YouTube video that I spotted, but so you can go and look it up. But they built this agentic system within ChatDev, which it sort of personifies AI agents so that you can sort of see what's going on. Quite a neat little way of doing it. But essentially what they did was they built a hierarchical agent-based system. I just think it's a really good way of understanding where the opportunity might lie, and I can sort of give you why and how it got me into them, and why ultimately we ended up building a product that is based off agents. What they went and did was, or the developers, is a New Zealand guy, they essentially created this hierarchical system where they said, okay, we want to go and create a game, so let's build a team. And in that team, they had CEO agent, they had some developer agents, they had some QA agents, they had some testing agents, they even had some documentation agents, and they set them the task of building this game. And you can actually watch it as it actually runs, because essentially what happens is the CEO puts out this idea and this thought for a game. It goes down to the development agents, who then write the initial code base. They then send it over to the sort of QA agents, who sort of look for errors. There's some back and forth as they start improving the code base and fixing the bugs, etc., etc. And eventually they sort of come back and feed it all back up to the CEO. And when they took this package that was delivered back from this agentic system and ran it and installed it, up popped Pong as this fully working game. And not only that, the document agents has actually created a whole set of documentation around how to play the game and how to install the game. So autonomously, these agents had gone and created an entire game in a matter of minutes, it has to be said. When I saw that, I just thought, well, why couldn't any one of those roles actually be a role in any business? And in marketing, obviously, that would be, it could be a copywriter, it could be an SEO expert, it could be, a meta ads expert. They could all work together to essentially hone a business. And exactly the same thing could be thought of when you're thinking within e-commerce businesses, is you'll have all these roles and hierarchical systems that perhaps are just based on knowledge, and if you applied agents to them, perhaps there's a huge amount that you could do very, very quickly without actually having to go and get the humans to do the work. So I think that was the wake-up call for me. Once you sort of get your head around that, you can then start going and looking into, okay, well, how do I build these agents? What's the difference between an agent and, say, a chatbot? The different models. There's reasoning models, obviously, and then standard sort of GPT models. How are they used differently? How are you going to combine these? But just giving that example, you can sort of get a feel for what and how and where they may help you. Then again, just thinking about, okay, what and where and what things can you do to prepare yourself for all of this? There's really sort of, I think, three parts to the process. And this is somewhat based on digital transformation, which again is something that agencies have been doing for years for businesses. You'd be surprised at how many companies still feel like they need to be digitally transformed, but they do. So this is sort of stolen from there. But the first thing is getting on top of your data. So once you've sort of understood where you think your business is going to be and how you think it's going to move forward, it's getting organized in terms of where all your data sits. Now, obviously, as an e-commerce brand, you're going to have all sorts of data in all sorts of different places, probably pretty structured, which is great. But on top of that, you're going to have what I would call information. Now, this is more unstructured stuff. So these are going to be documents that sit inside, Google Drives, and I don't know, it could be even HR information. There's all sorts of information that sits inside your business that historically you would not have classed as data. but actually AI is particularly good at using this sort of unstructured data. So it's still really, really useful. So getting that all organized. So once you've sort of got your company map, get your sort of information data map, and now you've got these two sort of big pieces. So one's going to can essentially become your knowledge base, and that could, like I said, could be anything from internal information to client understanding to supplier understanding to pure, data that sits inside your e-commerce platforms. All this sort of information is going to be useful stuff that can be used going forward. Then I was going to pick a single use case, find one workflow, pick a single person or a single team, capture the information that's needed for that single workflow, and nail it with some sort of AI-based automation. I would avoid, and I've seen this now many, many times, trying to do too many things, trying to think, right, our whole business is going to be, AI-fied. You can get there in the end. That can obviously be your vision, but just pick one workflow. If you nail it, you'll soon find that the rest of the company jump on it and want to start doing their own thing. If you mess it up, which, hand on heart, we've messed up a number of times with a number of clients. We don't do it now, but in the early days we did. All that happens is it sort of further adds fuel to the fire that this is either hype or these things aren't going to work. I want to go back to my old ways of doing things. Change management, really, really difficult thing to do, and it's even more difficult if what you're trying to get them to do didn't work. So my advice, whether you decide to take it or not, is just pick a single workflow and absolutely nail it. Once you have, piloting it further across the business, scaling it, improving it becomes way, way, way easier. There's a lot changing. We're changing an absolute clip. If you think about how far we've come, we had GPT 2.5 before we even got ChatGPT, then ChatGPT. Now we've got lots and lots more models. Now we've got reasoning models, and even more recently, we've got sort of computer use and operators, which models that can go and actually use your computer on your behalf, albeit they're not particularly accurate yet, but super, super interesting stuff, moving super fast. But a huge, huge opportunity for almost any business. But of course, within e-commerce, where your entire world is essentially based online and in a digital format, I think the opportunities are absolutely massive.
Fergus, thanks for the interesting presentation.